Dear Francis, I need to tell you something important. I've decided to move in with Kathryn, and because of that, your mother will have to transition to a nursing home, Terry said bluntly, his statement slicing through the silence. His gaze met mine for a fleeting moment, carrying a cold challenge instead of warmth. Kathryn, standing next to him, flashed an unsettling smile, one that hinted at malice more than mirth. It struck me how basic decency, something so essential even among friends, seemed beyond their grasp. The thought of living with someone who lacked even the simplest courtesies, particularly towards family, was more than I could bear. Kathryn's disdainful treatment of my beloved mother was the last straw. It became clear that I had to sever ties with both Terry and Kathryn, who had shown nothing but neglect and disrespect towards her. My name is Francis, and I am a 33-year-old working professional. My family returned to my childhood home 3 years ago after my father's passing to care for my mother, who had grown increasingly reclusive after losing her life partner. At that time, Terry had just lost his job, and we were facing financial difficulties. Out of concern for my mother's well-being, I suggested that we all live together. Terry was reluctant, but eventually agreed due to the situation. With a demanding job that kept me occupied during the weekdays, my schedule was hectic. My mother took on the household chores throughout the week, and I helped as much as I could over the weekends. Terry, on the other hand, showed little interest in contributing, despite his continued job search and apparent stress. It took him 8 months to find employment after moving in with us. But soon, his complaints about job stress and tiredness became excuses for not helping around the house. Men aren't known for their attention to detail, my mom would say, trying to lighten the mood with a smile that barely hid her disappointment. My frustration mounted as I juggled longer work hours and weekend commitments. "Why won't you help with the chores?" I confronted Terry one evening. He shrugged off the responsibility, claiming he simply wasn't suited for housework. "That's no excuse," I replied sternly. I had not been keen on housework either, but necessity had taught me to manage. Their disregard for my mother and the home we shared had reached a breaking point. It was time for change, and it was clear that it had to start with letting go of the toxic elements in our lives, starting with Terry and Kathryn. I had made an effort to adapt and learn, yet you don't seem to try at all, I lamented. Terry simply shrugged, his indifference palpable as he backed away from the conversation. "Things are different now. You had time to learn. I'm just too busy," he retorted. His words left a heavy silence in the air as he turned and walked away, leaving me to grapple with the unresolved tension. Mom had been experiencing trouble with her knees, making it increasingly crucial for us to share the workload at home. However, Terry had shown little interest in helping out from the beginning. Over time, it had unfortunately become the accepted norm that Terry would dodge any household responsibilities. A new problem arose when Terry began inviting his sister Kathryn to our home on weekends. Kathryn, 4 years my senior, displayed a surprising lack of maturity and common sense for someone her age. Her poor manners always irked me, and her behavior during visits only reinforced my feelings. Upon entering, she'd carelessly toss her hat onto the table, completely disregarding Mom, the homeowner. Brashly, she asked, "Old woman got any Coke?" When Mom, visibly upset by her rudeness, replied that we didn't have any, Kathryn said, "Well, you should go buy some. It's bad manners not to offer anything to guests." "Please buy your own. We weren't expecting guests," I interjected, hoping my firm response would silence her. Despite this, Kathryn's intrusive behavior continued. She would wander through the house, opening doors to private rooms and helping herself to dessert from the fridge. Talking to Terry about it was futile. "Look, when Kathryn comes over, neither Mom nor I can relax," I explained one evening, trying to convey the strain her visits were causing. "It's okay occasionally, but every week is too much. If you're both free, why not go out instead of always coming here?" His dismissive attitude and her disrespectful antics were wearing thin, and it was clear that something needed to change if peace was to be restored in our home. "Dealing with your sister is becoming too much for my family, Terry," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "You know I live with your mother, Megan, out of necessity. You should be more appreciative instead of defensive." "It's not the same thing at all," I continued, refusing to let him blur the lines. "I wish you wouldn't compare your mom with Kathryn. Megan is quiet and keeps to herself, while Kathryn causes nothing but trouble." "That's irrelevant," Terry shot back stubbornly. "I've allowed Megan to live with us, so you should accept Kathryn's visits just as well." Frustrated, I pressed on. "It's not the same. Your mother deserves our respect and kindness. Kathryn, on the other hand, is consistently rude to us both." This comparison ignited a heated debate, as Terry seemed unable or unwilling to see the clear distinctions. Since we had been married, Terry had always been a reserved man, but I noticed a shift in his behavior after he was laid off due to his poor performance at work. Although I felt sympathy for him, I still expected him to uphold basic civility. Yet, the issue with Kathryn's frequent and disruptive visits was just the tip of the iceberg. One day, Kathryn arrived unexpectedly at our doorstep, a large bag slung over her shoulder. "Get ready for me," she declared boldly, catching both Megan and me off guard. Terry was the only one who greeted her with warmth, enthusiastically welcoming her. "Good to see you, Kathryn. Welcome. This is your home from now on." We had a spare room, previously my dad's study, and I was hesitant about letting Kathryn use it. Terry made his announcement with startling bluntness. "Kathryn is moving in here starting today," he declared, without having discussed it with either his mother or me beforehand. "Stop complaining," he snapped when I began to protest. "I've decided that Kathryn is moving in. If you have a problem with that, your old woman can go to a nursing home. If you don't like it, we can get a divorce." His words echoed sharply in the room, while behind him, Kathryn wore a malicious smirk. The shock of the moment left me rigid, a surge of anger building inside me as I watched the blatant disrespect directed toward my mother. Terry, completely unfazed, began dictating the new arrangements with an air of authority that took me aback. "Megan, Kathryn will be using your room. You'll have to move to the study," he declared. My mother's face mirrored my disbelief. Terry and Kathryn proceeded upstairs without further discussion, and Mom and I reluctantly followed, only to find them starting to rearrange her belongings in her room. My patience snapped. "That's enough!" I erupted, my voice filled with frustration. "Fine, let's get divorced now. Please leave." "Are you serious?" Terry looked down at me with a dismissive laugh, but without a moment's hesitation, I nodded firmly. "I am serious. I've reached my limit with you and Kathryn. Living with her is not an option. If you're suggesting divorce, I'm ready for it. I'll take care of my mom," I asserted resolutely. "You're willing to throw away your life for an old woman with limited years left?" Terry shot back sharply. "Spending the rest of my life with you would be a real waste," he retorted. "You brought up divorce. Let's follow through," I insisted. "Fine, until I find a new place, Kathryn will stay in my room. Why don't you move over to your beloved Megan's room?" Terry countered, his tone challenging. "That's my plan anyway," I replied calmly, already mentally preparing for the next steps. Terry and Kathryn looked down on me, chuckling, likely anticipating they would come out ahead in the property division during the divorce. Swiftly, I packed my belongings and moved into Mom's room. After enduring the discomfort of sharing a room with Terry for so long, I finally found peace in my new sleeping quarters. Concerned, Mom approached me. "Are you sure about the divorce? You'll be alone now." "Don't worry, Mom. I'm okay with it. You mean more to me than that man," I reassured her earnestly. Mom nodded sadly, bearing no blame for the situation, and once the divorce was finalized, I felt a profound sense of relief, free from the turmoil that had overshadowed our lives. "And now you find my behavior rude?" I challenged, observing how he paled and fell into silence. I don't know anything about Kathryn's actions. She's never listened to me, no matter how much I scold her. he admitted, his voice tinged with resignation. So you gave up trying to guide her, which explains why you have such a selfish daughter and son, I pointed out sharply. Terry is different. He's always been quiet and never caused trouble, he argued. Then why would such a polite person invite his sister into our home without asking and attempt to evict my mother from her room? I countered. The reason we divorced was clear. Terry had bluntly stated that if I couldn't live with Kathryn, we should divorce. Where did this rumor of an affair come from? I pressed, noting his bewildered look and prolonged silence. Realizing the futility of our discussion, I stood up. Please ensure your children do not behave this way in the future. I apologize for my abruptness today, I concluded firmly before exiting the room. After the incident, my in-laws formally approached me to apologize. Please apologize to my mother as well, I insisted. This prompted a genuine expression of regret and even compensation for the trouble caused, leaving my mother visibly touched by the gesture. I later learned that he had summoned Terry and Kathryn to their home and reprimanded them. While he had his faults, his actions paled in comparison to Kathryn's egregious behavior. My recounting of Kathryn's actions must have struck a nerve, leading him to realize that significant changes were necessary. It was rumored that both parents had given their children a stern talking to, yet it seemed Terry and Kathryn's issues were far from resolved. Sometime after my mother and I had relocated, Terry unexpectedly called me. "Hey, Frances, where are you?" he asked abruptly. "Why do you need to know?" I replied coolly. "Because your house is up for sale," he said, frustration clear in his voice. I repeated my question. "Why do I need to tell you where I am?" "Well," he hesitated, suddenly grasping the gravity of my question. "Despite my lingering affection for you, I've come to realize just how deeply I've missed you since our separation. My earlier behavior was merely a facade meant for Kathryn. Deep down, I truly wanted to cherish both you and Megan. However, my continuous struggle to confront Kathryn remains unchanged, no matter how much he claims to have transformed, apologized, or professed his love. Yet, my heart remains steadfast, unyielding to his entreaties. The moment he introduced Kathryn into our home, threatened divorce, and insulted my mother was unforgivable. I am resolute in this belief, your feelings notwithstanding. We are divorced, and no amount of apologies or financial compensation will sway my decision. I've stated this firmly. When you pleaded for another chance, claiming to realize the value of what we had, and promising change, I saw through it. You're merely seeking someone to manage the household chores, I thought, vindicated by your unwitting admission. I couldn't help but blurt out my thoughts, hitting too close to home. And now, you dare suggest a reconciliation? It's incredulous. Remember your laughter when we discussed divorce, how you and Kathryn belittled my mother and me? Now the situation has reversed, leaving me with a mix of frustration and a satisfying sense of justice. You accuse me of arrogance merely because I've chosen to stand my ground while you display humility. Shouldn't you be the one demonstrating remorse? Have taught you nothing about empathy and responsibility? It's you who should be apologizing. I've heard about your disrespect towards my mother, and your lies blaming Kathryn. Death has scolded us both because of your actions, I countered, my frustration evident. Your casual attitude only made me laugh. Do you truly not see the impact of your actions? Many people your age are already managing families and making mature decisions, but here you are, in your 30s, acting like you're still in high school. This is the path you've picked. It's high time you stopped shifting the blame and started owning up to your mistakes. I'm at my limit. If you can't understand the seriousness of what I'm telling you, then there's no use in continuing this conversation. I'd appreciate it if you didn't reach out to me again. I ended our conversation with firm resolve and blocked Terry's number immediately afterward. Even so, notifications of missed calls from him continued to pop up on my phone, but I had no intention of returning any of them. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that Terry and Kathryn had moved into a condominium together. Unfortunately, neither took to the responsibilities of maintaining a home, and their lack of housekeeping soon turned their new place into a cluttered, disorganized mess. Eventually, the situation became so severe that the condo owner had to ask them to vacate due to the unpleasant odors and Kathryn's disruptive behavior. In a hurried attempt to remedy their living conditions, they employed a cleaning service, which momentarily brought improvements. However, it wasn't long before their home lapsed back into a state of disorder. To my surprise, they reached out to me for help during this chaotic period. Additionally, I heard that Kathryn's penchant for extravagant spending had not waned. She had previously depended financially on a boyfriend who ultimately left her because of her reckless financial habits. Now, with him out of the picture, she heavily leaned on Terry's income, which only exacerbated their financial difficulties. Meanwhile, I was settling into a new phase of my life. After moving into my place, I decided it was time for a change of scenery and some healing time for both me and my mother, who had been carrying a heavy heart, partly blaming herself for my divorce. We traveled to California, a trip that proved to be rejuvenating. It was there, under the warm sun and by the soothing waves, that I saw my mother smile with a brightness I hadn't seen in a long time. A genuine, heartfelt smile that spoke of slowly healing wounds. Looking to the future, I'm not setting any concrete plans. Marriage might be in the cards again someday, but only with someone who truly appreciates the importance of family and exhibits genuine kindness and basic decency. Until such a time, I am content with my single life, focusing on my career and dedicating myself to ensuring my mother's happiness and well-being. This chapter of my life is about growth, self-reflection, and nurturing the family bonds that sustain us through tough times.